And there's a possibility, ironically, that Kevin Durant finds himself in the exact same situation he was trying to remove himself from back in OKC, on a roster that is overly dependent on his skill set, him clocking in 40 plus minutes a night at an advanced age of 30 plus years old, and doing all that with the possibility of the result of the team still losing in a 7-game series. We are 15 games into the regular season, and the Nets are so far removed from where they want to be as a franchise that I honestly don't know what they can do to change things around. With a record of 6-9, a mediocre offense, a bottom 10 defense, them already firing head coach Steve Nash 7 games into the regular season, Kyrie Irving already missing games this early on into the year, and Ben Simmons looking nowhere near close to the player that he once was, the Nets might have dug themselves a hole way too deep for them to come out of, and the one individual that will suffer the most out of this is Kevin Durant. And honestly, none of this really isn't a surprise to me at all. Not only because some of this was identifiable 8 months ago, but looking at the trajectory of the Brooklyn Nets moving forward and all of the options that are disposable to KD, I honestly don't see that many paths for the future Hall of Famer to come out in a positive light throughout this entire messy, dysfunctional, and disorganized situation. And I know I may come across as a bit hyperbolic, but please let me explain. Now first, let's address the elephant in the room, and that is Kevin Durant doesn't want to be in Brooklyn. Now, of course, there are several obvious reasons that would help anyone come to this conclusion, like who in their right mind would want to spend their last few years of their primes on a team that isn't contending, and of course, there are the trade demands that were made during the offseason as well. However, what I want to point out is why all of this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, because the same reasons why he wants out of Brooklyn are the same reasons why he left OKC. See, back in 2017, Durant made some posts on Twitter that were very revealing and brutally honest. Now, normally I wouldn't put that much credibility on what a public figure may have said in a public forum because, of course, they have an image to uphold. However, this situation is a tad bit different because he mistakenly assumed that he was on his burner account, but sadly he wasn't, and it went up on his official verified Twitter account. So when a Twitter user prompted the question, give me one legitimate reason for leaving OKC other than getting a championship, Kevin Durant, again believing that he's on his burner, replied, he didn't like the organization or playing for Billy Donovan. His roster wasn't that good. It was just him and Russ. Durant then continues, imagine taking Russ off that team. See how bad they were? KD can't win a championship with those cats. And just for all these skeptics out there who may believe that he was hacked, Kevin Durant would then give a much more direct approach to this line of questioning on the All the Smoke podcast, where he gave a very clear explanation of his qualms with the organization in OKC as well as the roster.
With OKC, I play with a lot of athletes. I didn't play with a lot of skill guys, not like shooters, ball handlers. So after a while, my game started to grow. I was like, I need a change. This is before the season even started. You know they're going to sell out to stop me. Meaning they're going to leave Andre Roberson.
Anybody but you.
I would Anybody too. But me.
I would leave Andre Roberson too.
And it's easy for a team to guard us when we got guys that not respected from the three. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So I was tired of playing in that system.
Again, very interesting, revealing, and extremely honest from a player who was on a team that was a title contending unit. But now, since we know all of the complaints that Durant had within his time in OKC, let's write it down and see how similar it is to the situation he's in right now. First, he didn't like the coach nor the front office. He also believed that the roster was extremely top heavy. And then he went into further detail, highlighting how there weren't enough skill players rather than way too many athletes on a roster, and even went as far as to highlight a specific player in Andre Roberson. So now, if we compare that to the situation out in Brooklyn, Durant has already been on record claiming that he did not want to return unless Steve Nash and Sean Marks lost their jobs. So it's fair to say that he didn't like the coaching nor front office. It's also undeniably true that the Brooklyn Nets are one of the more top-heavy teams in the NBA, as we've seen numerous times throughout the past 2 to 3 years now, what this roster looks like when Kyrie Irving is not available. And when it comes to the makeup of the roster so far this year, fair enough, you could easily argue that there's more three-point shooters on this team than there was in OKC with Seth Curry and Joe Harris. However, the team is still constructed in a way in which they have to overly depend on the shot creation of Kevin Durant. And also you have the non-skill players like Nick Claxton and certainly Ben Simmons that will hinder any type of floor spacing that Durant needs to operate in so he can be a quality scorer. So ironically, you could easily make the argument that after all of these years since his time in OKC, KD has found himself right back in the exact same situation. But if anything, it could be worse because unlike the Thunder, the Brooklyn Nets have been and are still one of the worst defensive units in the NBA, which definitely wasn't a problem within his time in Oklahoma City. Now you may be thinking to yourself, all of that sounds great, but how exactly does any of this impact Kevin Durant's legacy? Well, it's pretty simple. If Durant back in 2016 was able to identify the problems with the Thunder that prevented him from playing great basketball on a great team that could result in a championship, and some of those exact same problems are identifiable with the Brooklyn Nets, more than likely that means that Durant believes that there is also a very clear ceiling of what this Nets team can accomplish. And if Durant was not able to win a championship within his time in OKC, he also believed that the playing style and the coaching in Oklahoma City Thunder was not good enough, too rudimentary, and he wanted something a bit more advanced to complement his style of play a bit more. If he believed all those things, and that roster, I think everyone can agree upon, was better than what we are witnessing right now, then there's absolutely no way that he truly believes that this team can compete for any deep postseason run in the near future. And to make it worse, Brooklyn can't even make any real improvements on the roster either. The reason why we know this is because with Seth Curry and Kyrie Irving coming off the books for the following year, the Nets have already committed $139 million to this team. So after they sign Kyrie, the Nets will clear $150 million committed to this roster. And again, that doesn't even account to what they may have to give Seth Curry to retain him. And if they don't, then once more, the roster will get worse. Now you're probably asking yourself, well, why exactly are they in so much financial disarray? And it's because of the Ben Simmons contract. Simmons this year is making $35 million. The following year, he's making roughly $38 million. And then in the last year of his contract, he is clearing 40 M's for a player that is playing nowhere near to the same level as other players in the league who are getting paid relatively the same, such as Devin Booker, Pascal Siakam, Zach LaVine, Trae Young, and Luka Doncic, just to name a few. So the level of financial commitment that the Nets are going to have to see within just 3 players with Kyrie, KD, and Simmons, it is very clear that this franchise has already met its threshold with the type of talent that it could acquire to potentially make them better. So yeah, Brooklyn is a mess. And Kevin Durant is the only player on this team who has the ability to consistently carry them to compete for regular season wins. Right now, he's 34 years old, clocking in 37 minutes a game, trying to compete with a team that on any given night is so poorly defensively that they can allow the opposing team's best player to have a career night against them. And even when Kyrie does come back and play, there's so many holes on the team offensively, especially with players such as Ben Simmons and Nick Claxton, that at best the Brooklyn Nets are going to hover around being an average offensive ball club, which all amounts to a team that more than likely will be struggling to make a playoff appearance yet again, let alone competing for a deep postseason run, and certainly are far removed from competing for a championship, which is not only unfortunate, but is literally the worst case scenario for KD. Because as we all know, KD is one of the greatest players who ever touched a basketball, a resume so luxurious that he can easily make the argument that he is one of the top 20 players the association has ever seen. And because of that status that he upholds within NBA history, the only way that he can continue to climb the ladder into all-time greatness is by winning championships. And if he's not able to do that with this roster, then there's nothing more that he can really and truly add to his resume that will be the difference maker. Now, some of you may be saying, well, adding something to his resume may be out the question, but at the end of the day, he's at least a top 20 player of all time, and that's good enough. And quite honestly, that is true. But I would argue that that might not be it, because even though, yes, it may be true, the days of adding to his legacy might be over. However, what I believe will start to happen is that people will begin to take away and belittle all the things that he's accomplished throughout his career, and unfortunately, we've already taken the first step in that direction. That first step was the Golden State Warriors winning a championship last year, and honestly, I don't think I have to go into that much details about this. Not only is Golden State winning a championship, reestablishing who they are as a dynasty, but it irrefutably proves that they can win a championship with or without KD. Furthermore, in the process of doing so, not only did Curry play great and the Warriors end up beating the same team that knocked out Kevin Durant in the first round, but also KD's replacement was Andrew Wiggins, the same player who was viewed as overpaid, a bust, and did not contribute to winning basketball, was turned into not only an all-star last year, but arguably the second best player on a championship caliber roster. Further proving that the Warriors not only didn't need KD, but it shows the wonders of what that roster, what that organization, and what that system can do for anyone. And then the final step to Durant's worst nightmare is the idea of him potentially leaving Brooklyn. Because let's just be honest, KD being up 3-1 against the Golden State Warriors and blowing that opportunity, then leaving that ball club to join the Warriors, in the process complaining about the organization and his teammates and how poorly constructed the roster was around him, just for him to then turn around 3 years later and leave the Golden State Warriors to try to establish something on his own in Brooklyn. Bro, if Kevin Durant fails in his manner and tries to join another roster to try to seek more success, it's going to be a really, really bad look, especially if he joins a team with an established star on the roster. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Please let me know what you think about the video in the comment section below. This is no hate to Kevin Durant, but I just feel like he's in one of the toughest positions I've ever seen any NBA player be in my entire life. But let me know again in the comment section below. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and notification bell, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.